Hello, everyone, and sorry for my appearance. It looks like I'm about to go surfing. I'm not. I'm just moisturizing. I look like that guy from. Well, I look like Sean Penn from Fast Times at Ridgemont High. I don't know if you've seen that film, but let's continue. And there was a reason why I paused at the previous point in the slide. Was I had to get energy to tell you the story behind the next slide. Okay. So here we are in post-Khomeini's Iran. And come on. Okay, a fatwa is a religious ruling. If there's any case of religious patriarchy, it's through the ruling, when usually men who are clerics make some kind of pronouncement that usually affect women. And we're going to see a couple of the fatwas. Here is one on a particular website. I just noticed the ad for sexy Iranian girls. I've been using this slide for, God, I've been teaching this class in 2011 and I just noticed that. So I don't know what my students have been thinking about me, but believe me, that is not based on my past research patterns. Alaska Airlines, yes, because that's how I used to fly from San Diego to Monterey, my hometown. But the sexy Iranian girls, no. But of course, it goes without saying, here, I'm just gonna cover, there we go. Let's just cover that up. An ad selling sexy Iranian girls, well, there you go, that's patriarchy of the market. How often do we see an ad selling sexy Iranian men? All right. What is the website talking about? Ayatollah Gilani was just one example of, well, a relatively crazy religious fatwa. And basically, a fatwa is a religious ruling on a matter of faith that can't be answered directly from scripture. The fatwa in this particular case was, well, the Ayatollah, and the Ayatollah is just a word for the equivalent of a bishop, came up with a hypothetical scenario. And the hypothetical scenario was this. Imagine there's a two-story house. A nephew is sleeping on the second floor. His aunt is sleeping on the first floor. And then this cleric asks, what happens if there's an earthquake? And during that earthquake, what happened if this man sleeping on the second story of the house was erect? And then what happened if the earthquake happened and the floor collapsed and somehow the man churned over with his erect penis and somehow, I assume the aunt downstairs would be closed, but somehow, and if she survived the falling debris, so did the guy. And if he still erect penetrates her, would that be considered lawful intercourse or rape? And I can't remember the exact fatwa. I'm not sure if he also said, what if he gets her pregnant as well? I can't remember that, but that's just a good example of some of the crazy nature of religious patriarchy in Iran. That's just one particular case dealt with in this website. But perhaps some other famous ones that get international attention. This person here, Mr. Raifipur, he would also be a cleric and just another example of patriarchy of the state. When telling women they shouldn't wear high heel because it makes their feet look like the hoofs of a jinn, in other words, a demon or a devil, just think of the devil's feet. And that logos on the t-shirt signify devil worship. And then one of the most famous fatwas was issued by a Hujjatul Islam is just the equivalent of a rank below a bishop. So we could just say, for the sake of comparison, a priest who once said, girls who don't dress appropriately spread promiscuity, and that causes earthquakes. Okay, yeah, naked women, or let's say scantily clad women, causes earthquakes. What did this cause in a response? Well, somebody to create a Facebook group called Boobquake in response to this cleric. This was a site. In other words, this cleric's fatwa went international, and several women took offense at it and said, we are going to congregate and show off our boobs, and well, let's see if that causes an earthquake as kind of a response to the cleric. Sure enough, a naked woman showed up, and the rest were just horny men. And these events happened all around the world. This was the boob cake to prove that when women are not dressed, it does not cause earthquakes. Nonetheless, when the boob cake, I keep on calling that, the boob quake day was organized, a 6.5 magnitude earthquake struck off the coast of Taiwan. Okay. Coincidence? There's earthquakes happening every day. Now we'll get to an Iranian president depicted here. His name is Mahmoud Ahmadinejad. And so he was elected in 2005. And remember I said there were attempts to kind of loosen the restrictions, particularly the powers of the religious police and kind of controlling women. He wanted to roll back a lot of these restrictions, including enforcing segregation, particularly not allowing men and women to enter the elevator at the same time. Well, if you know anything about Iran, you're lucky if you have an elevator. If a building does have one, there's only one. And it's impossible then to have segregated elevators. Okay. Men will get priority, women will have to take the stairs, no building. He envisioned a system of buildings with two elevators, one for women, one for men. His recommendation, or in this example, patriarchy of the state, was met by ridicule. And how do we know? Because we see SMS jokes, such as the first one. So on one level, he was made fun of because of his unkempt experience. Let's look at the first joke. Someone goes to hell and finds Ahmadinejad dancing with Angelina Jolie. He calls the devil and says, I want to be punished like Ahmadinejad. The devil replies, well, that's Angelina's punishment. Now let's look at the second one. One day Ahmadinejad got lice in his hair because, he was unkept. He took a comb and made a neat parting in his hair. Somebody asked the president why he made a hair parting. Ahmadinejad replied, one side is for the male lice, the other for the females, making fun of his elevator policy. And then, of course, 4 years later, Iran has presidential elections. And he was coming up for re-election. And he was challenged by this figure here. Is the name important? Yeah, let me tell you. His last name is Mousavi. Okay, again, I'll never ask you about a guy on an exam, but yeah, his name was Mousavi, and while Ahmadinejad's wife, or another of the first lady, was rarely shown in public, Mousavi made a deliberate attempt to include his wife on the campaign trail. Look at the people, his supporters, and you can see the women who are his supporters would be considered the examples of bad hijabi. Not only was one hair showing, this one is not only having her hair showing, but doing something that would be quite outrageous, dyeing her hair a bright pink. And if you look at this woman here, who's a Mousavi supporter, look what she's writing. Well, no, let's look at the woman on the left, because here we have on one of her hands the name Mousavi, but also the name of his running mate, who used her maiden name in the elections. But by the way, that's nothing unusual, because in the Middle East, you keep your maiden name. That's really a Western tradition that a woman gives up her last name when she marries somebody. Of course, the kids get the husband's name, but no, usually women keep their maiden names. But anyway, what is this woman on the left making a point of is the prominence given to Mousavi's wife on the campaign trail. And she herself was educated. She was a professor of political science, a PhD, so in other words. And then the woman on the right, what is she holding on her arms? The first is the word zan, which means woman. And the next is the word mard, which means man. In other words, holding her hands like this, she's calling for gender equality and saying the candidate I support, Mousavi, will advance women's equality in Iran. And so you could see the kind of the bad hijabis came out. You could see how this woman would look like in her official documentation, wearing the chador, because that's patriarchy of the state. But for voting, of course, here she is coming out in the way she would normally dress. And again, this might be considered bad hijabi, but this is what these women are trying to protect. Because if Ahmadinejad got reelected, they feared further clampdowns on the way they dressed. Okay. Again, just other images of what the state might call bad hijabis casting their vote. Then what happened? Before even the votes could have been possibly tallied, Ahmadinejad was declared the victor. His challenger immediately contested the ruling, saying there's no way the vote could have been counted that fast, and particularly because the challenger to the incumbent even lost in his home province, raising suspicions amongst most of the Iranian population who came out to the street to protest. Why do you think this woman put her sign in English? Well, I mean, she did that because she wanted the world to know that an election was being stolen. And again, you could see this is a supporter again of Mousavi. Again, where we could just see from the pictures, or like in the previous one, people who would be considered bad hijabis. Now, what do we make of all of this? Women as symbols in Iranian protests. Let's look at this article. So it was 2009 during the time of the protest. The state endorses the black chador wearing woman as the ideal woman of the nation. That's patriarchy of the state. The chador wearing Ahmadinejad supporters are juxtaposed against who? The Gucci wearing dyed fringe loose hijab wearing Mousavi's supporter, or so it seems. So in other words, do you see how a woman's appearance becomes kind of a barometer of their political allegiance? Now, what did Women News Network ask us around the same time? Do you notice there was something common in all the pictures? And first of all, do you have to ask, where were those pictures coming from? Where did I get them from? Well, usually Western news reporters in Iran. And did you notice a good number of them tended to be pretty? I thought they were pretty, okay. So what is this article saying? Sex sells, but so does Iranian beauty. Okay. Now, this is a question. Under advertising agencies, understand that attractiveness draws people in. And so this is a question, when the news agencies were using these pictures, were they giving us basically clickbait? In other words, yeah, were they using attractiveness to get clickbait? In other words, somebody who might not be interested in Iran might see that picture and in a form of kind of neo-Orientalism click to see who is this woman behind this story. What's problematic about that is, well, with any kind of image, when you use attractiveness to kind of sell a story, does the issue, the essence, the ethics, all behind this, what the people are these women and other people who are protesting against, does that get lost in the story? And again, our same article that more or less came around at the same time. Look at what it is titled, You Want a Revolution in a Loose Headscarf. And in this article here, forced unveiling and forced veiling, is considered a similar process. And now I've given you a term to describe that process, patriarchy of the state. Now, in this case, an Iranian woman named Muallem writes about how her grandmother who veiled, right, was a corporeal inscription of citizen. In other words, how your body appeared was your kind of declaration of what kind of citizen you were. She was forced to unveil, I was forced to veil. At the end of the day, they're both disciplinary measures. They're usually violent, and they're usually policies pursued by men enacted on female bodies by male soldiers or police, with the purpose of creating that female billboard of the state, or as she writes, the feminine civic body. Okay, in other words, again, this is all patriarchy of the state, having very little to do with religious patriarchy. Now, keep in mind, I did show you a female enforcer of veiling, but that's a rare exception. Men police are also authorized to force women to comply with proper veiling as dictated by the state. And even, I said, even a female religious police is still an enforcer of patriarchy of the state. Ahmadinejad's term ran out. 2009, so again, add 4 more years. And look at his challenger, Rouhani, who's again, his appearance, his smile was seen as just much more photogenic as his predecessor. But look what he's trying to do in the following video. Who is he inspired by? And look who he gave prominence to in his following electoral video. Oh, sorry, I gotta find the video. Where would it be? Okay. Oops. No, not here. Sorry. Here, maybe. Probably have too many tabs open. Okay. There we go. There we go.
و فرصت خدمت برای همه ایرانیانی که دل در گرو این مرز و بوم دارند باز شود. بگذاریم که شایستگان به ملت خدمت کنند. بگذاریم که سینه ها از کینه ها پاک شود. بگذاریم که آشتی جای رحم و دوستی جای دشمنی بنشینیم.
سرنوشت هر ملتی به دست خودش است.
بگذاریم که اسلام با چهره رحمانیش، ایران با چهره عقلانیش، انقلاب با چهره انسانیش، و نظام با چهره عاطفیش همچنان حماسه بیافرد
و یخلق النصر
مسلمان ها شما قوی ترین امت دنیا است.
من سنگینی بار این رأی و این تنفیذ را احساس می‌کنم و تنها به خدا پناه میبرم.
خدا کمکت کنه.
فردا حتما روشن.
از اون دستگیر بنده نواز خالصانه و خاضعانه درخواست میکنم این بنده ضعیف خود را از شر کبر و غرور، حرص و بخل و حسد وارهاند. خداوندا
به تو پناه میبرم.
خداوندا به تو پناه میبرم. از استبداد رأی، عجله در تصمیم، تقدم نفع شخصی و گروهی بر مصالح عمومی و بستن دهان رقیبان و منتقدان.
اینجا تهران است. صدای رافتی ملتیان، صدای انقلاب.
تا بنده مخلصی برای تو
خدایا یاریش کن
و خادم لایقی برای مردم باشم.
خادمی لایکی به مردمان بابا.
و فراموش نکنم آنچه بر پیشینیان رفته است. سخن بسیار است و مجال اندک، چه بهتر که سخن را کوتاه کنیم و پای در رهن
همتش مدرقه راه کنه، طاهر بود ای طاهر بود
که دراز است ره مقصد و من نو سفرم.
Okay, so if none of you get the cultural references, this was similar to an advertisement that Obama used prior to his election. What was quite surprising by Iranian standards in that video, it was said that Mousavi lost his election against Ahmadinejad for being really pushing the boundaries too far in terms of, well, in one level, particularly the freedoms he would most likely give women in public life. And for that reason, they say the election was rigged. Now, what was this candidate, Rouhani, saying? Well, if you saw the videos, he was basically saying the same thing as Rouhani. From this video, what do we get? That he was pushing the limits. It was quite rare to have in public a woman singing. And not only that, and it's quite funny that, to gather meaning from the appearance of a particular woman's veil. Some women were veiled in the traditional chador, others were wearing the loose hijab. And what was Rouhani saying in this video? I would allow a space for both. I'm not making a statement about both. Now, coming from Rouhani, that was significant because if you notice the way Rouhani was dressed, he himself is a cleric. Okay, so in other words, this is coming from one faction of the religious establishment saying it's time to loosen restrictions. There are other clerics very much opposed to Rouhani. Rouhani won 2 terms, he's still president and still faces a lot of pushback from his more conservative rivals. It was Rouhani, by the way, that negotiated the Iran nuclear deal. And when Trump withdrew from it, Rouhani got a lot of attack from his conservative clerics saying, see, look, he made a deal with the US. The US proved fickle. Anyway, so. Back to the lecture. Now let's talk about banned media. Like I said, Iranian women have to be veiled on Iranian television. Of course, foreign women on Iranian TV do not, but the censors do make them appear more decent. As we see, Michelle Obama's dress is just a little bit more appropriate for Iranian standards. Now, if you look at this guy, why is he a threat to the Islamic Republic? This is an actor in a telenovela. What is his threat? Well, the threat is this. You see, this telenovela, which is dubbed in Persian, doesn't come on approved Iranian channels. It is being beamed into Iran on a channel that broadcasts programming in Persian, but not controlled by the Iranian state. And that's what makes it a threat. It's not so much the threat of this guy in the telenovela. People say, is it his appearance, his long hair? And I say, no, Iranian religious figures look like this. Is what happens on this television show, Cuerpo del Deseo, Body of Desire. So can you imagine for Iranians who are used to kind of state-controlled media to have a telenovela, which is, well, you see, okay, quite radical for, Iranian homes. Now, this is the problem because you see the Islamic Republic would ideally like to control women when they leave outside their doorstep. They find it difficult entering inside their doorstep. Well, the Islamic Republic just simply had an easy solution. We will ban satellite dishes. Now, if I show you a skyline, okay, why would they want to ban satellite dishes? Okay. Well, number one, it's a source of corruption. Okay. Imam Kashani was an Iranian cleric. Okay. Look what he says in this following statement in the bottom. The West is in mourning. It has no longer any proper sons and daughters, no proper wives, no honor. And the argument he was making is, if the satellite dish were to be allowed or allow kind of Western values to be broadcast into Iranian homes, and we can't have that. So the satellite dish was made illegal. Now, if I show you, well, this is Tehran today. Do you see how many satellite dishes as far as you can see? In theory, this is also patriarchy of the state, dictating that we cannot let, a scantily clad woman be shown in Iranian homes is a threat to decency. Why did the Iranian state lose this battle? Well, like I said, it's kind of like speeding. If every car speeds, the policeman can't possibly impose a 65-mile speed limit. What did the Iranians do? They just gambled. They just said, if every one of us gets a satellite dish, there's no way the state can dismantle every single one of them. And that's how you kind of negotiate the limits of the Islamic Republic. Now, if you look at kind of a regime security officer in 2005, what problem is this causing that they can't control the satellite dishes? The majority of the population is young. Young people by nature are horny. Because they are horny, imagine he's saying this in Persian, they like to watch satellite channels where there are films or programs they can jerk off to. We have to do something about the satellite television to keep society free from this horny jerk-off situation. That, again, is patriarchy of the state. It is dictating or trying to dictate matters of sexuality behind the closed doors in the private sphere. So if you look at, remember that show, Cuerpo de Deseo? Okay, it's dubbed, right? Bahar and Hasti, 2 8-year-old girls, give their dolls distinctly un-Iranian names of Salvador and Isabella. All of this is kind of the culture of Westernization in Iranian society. Interesting enough, Iranian society, even when you create emojis, in this particular case, the emoji is wearing the full chador. What is this emoji holding in her hand? A sign that says death to America. In the other picture? Oh, a picture of the supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei. Yeah, so that's an emoji. That's a sticker, I should say. Yeah, and you see the various stickers you have an option from. All kind of, again, example of patriarchy of the state, even in the digital world. One sign says death to America, the other one I'm trying to reach. Chat memnu, forbidden chat, something we shouldn't be talking about. Mubarak Pashe is happy birthday. Anyway. Finally, to conclude. A 3-year-old Iranian girl unable to understand what's going on around her asks this question. Why doesn't Islam order men to cover their eyes rather than women cover their hair? Very good point. Even this girl realizes that patriarchy doesn't make any sense. Okay, that ends this week's lecture. Next week, we'll be dealing with Egypt. But let me just kind of go over the midterm. So we'll just end here a little bit earlier. Like I said, the midterm, exactly the same format, just so you know. So we just keep on the readings. Make sure you do the readings for Egypt. And I'll do that lecture in just one go. And then just remember the only difference is now it's going to be the same questions, except in this second midterm, you have to say how each question, or in your answer, say what am I asking? What is modern about it? Very good. Thank you.